I'd like to talk now about two different ways you can do a loop. So I'm going to go here. We talked about the for loop a bit, which is used when you want to execute a loop a certain number of times. Today we're going to talk about two different ways you can do a loop until some condition occurs or while some condition is true. So let's make a couple variables here, x and y. I'm going to say x equals 100, or x equals 0 rather. Y equals 100. Now the first loop we're going to talk about is the while loop. So here is how you do statements while something is true. And the syntax here is while, and then open parenthesis, and then your condition that you're going to test for. So I'm going to say, for this, I'm going to say while x is less than 100. And then I put an opening curly bracket and a closed curly bracket. And the statements you want to do are within those two brackets. So here I'm going to do a print statement. I am in my loop. I'm going to increment x just to have something to do within this loop. Now if you'll remember a variable with a plus plus like this, x plus plus, this is the same as x equals x plus 1. And then that's going to be the end of my loop. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying while the value of x is less than 100, do the things within these brackets. When it comes in here the first time, x is going to be equal to 0 because I initialized it up here to be equal to 0. It's going to do this test. It's going to say, is x less than 100? It is, because it's 0 the first time through. Since that condition is true, x is less than 100, it's going to go in and it's going to execute statements, the printf, the increment. It's going to execute statements until it hits this curly bracket here, which designates the end of this loop. So it goes in here with x equals 0. It does this printf. I am in my loop. It does x plus plus, which what does that do? That takes x, which is 0, and it increments it by 1. So after it does this x plus plus the first time, x is going to be equal to 1. Then it hits the end of the while loop, so it loops back up to where the while started from. It does this test again. It says, is x less than 100? Well, as you remember, we've gone through here once, so x has turned from 0 to 1. It's going to say, is x less than 100? It is still, because it's only 1. So it's going to go into the loop again. It's going to do the printf, I am in my loop. It's going to increment x once again, so x is going to go from 1 to 2, and then it's going to hit the end of the loop and go back up, do the test again, and continue through. So this is going to continue through, and then when x is equal to 99, it's going to say, is 99 less than 100? It is. It's going to come here. I'm in my loop. Then it increments x from 99 to 100, goes back up, does the test. At this point, it does the test. It says, is x less than 100? Well, no, x is equal to 100 because we've gone through here a bunch of times. And then at that point, it's going to pop out. It's going to see this is false. So it's going to go forward to the statement after this curly bracket. So if we put a print statement there, so that's the essence of the while loop. It's saying while something is true, do these statements within this loop. So let's change this to 10 so we don't have so many print statements. and we'll try compiling this and running it and see if it works. Now, just to make this more informative, I'm going to add to this printf here, I am in my loop, x is, I'm going to print the value of x here so we can see how that's changing. You remember a %d is what we use for an integer, to print an integer, and then I'm going to put my variable x there. So we run this, I get my output window, which I'll bring up here. So you can see what it did is it came in here, as I said, the first time x was 0. It did the print, I am in my loop, x is 0. Repeated this loop, incrementing x each time, and the last one it did was x is equal to 9, because then the next time after it incremented that 9 up till 10, it did this test. The test came back false, and we popped out of the loop and did our final printf. We are done with the loop. So you can see in this case, since I started at 0, if I wanted to loop 10 times, I did the less than 10, and that took me from 0 to 9, which is 10 times through the loop. So that's something you have to get used to in C, is that in general with C, you start things at 0. But that's how the while loop works. Pretty straightforward. While a condition is true, do some statements. So one thing to notice about the while loop is the condition is done at the beginning. So if the condition is false from the get-go, if I started with x equals 100 here, you're not going to execute anything even once in the while loop. So it's going to do the test, x is less than 10. It's not, so it's going to skip over that stuff and go to the print. So a while loop you use when you want to loop based on some condition and you want to test that condition up front. Now an alternative or another loop you can do is if you want to do the condition at the end, you can do what's called a do loop. So the syntax here is do, and then instead of the test at the beginning, you just have your curly bracket, open curly bracket, uncurly bracket, and then you have the condition here at the end. Do while y is greater than 0. So let's say here we want to do a similar thing. Printf, I am in my do loop So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going into this loop. I'm saying do these statements while this condition is true. When I start here, regardless of what y is, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start executing these statements. So I'm going to do the print. I'm going to do the y minus minus. Again, if you'll remember when we increment and decrement variables, that's the same as y equals y minus 1.